Hello, and welcome to the Night Sky Reader. I'm here with a story to help you relax, meditate, or gently drift to sleep. Tonight, building a dry stone wall on a quiet hillside. Settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin. The gap in the dry stone wall shows itself first by what the wind does. On the uphill side, the grass leans in one direction, thin seed heads brushing and bowing together. Along the intact runs of wall to either side, the stems nearest the stone are quieter, held in softer air, but where the wall has fallen, the breeze passes through unchecked, and the grasses in the opening move like water finding a low place. She comes up the hillside without hurry, and stops beside the break. The field is open, green already fading toward the muted colors of evening, and the stones that have slipped from the wall lie in a rough spill down the slope. Some are half hidden in grass, some resting cleanly on the surface, some carrying pale discs of lichen on faces that have not seen light in years. A sheep path crosses a little below, pressed narrow and bare in the turf, then disappears toward a gate she cannot see from here. She sets down her gloves and crouches. The surviving wall on either side still holds its line, two faces of stone, slightly leaning inward, with a center packed full of smaller pieces. It is not high. It does not need to be. It only needs to hold true, to make a boundary that can bear weather, weight, the brushing flank of an animal, the slow settling of seasons. A beetle moves over one fallen stone and slips under the lip of another. In the sheltered side of the standing wall, a tuft of finer grass has stayed greener than the rest. The difference is small but plain once she sees it. Shade, slower wind, a little more damp held after rain, a little warmth kept after sun. Even broken, the wall is still making conditions around itself. She could stand here and name things. The grass species, the lichens, gray and yellow-green, and one patch with a powdery mint color. The compacted line of the sheep track, the direction of prevailing wind across the slope. Instead, she puts one hand on the nearest stone and feels the rough, dry grain under her palm, and then the retained warmth where the sun has rested on it all afternoon. She stays with that a moment before she begins. She kneels in the grass and starts clearing the fallen section stone by stone. The work makes its own order. Broader stones go to one side for the footing. Flatter pieces, if they have a decent bed and a face worth showing, go within reach for the wall faces. Chips and hand-sized fragments gather in a smaller pile for hearting. She does not make the groups too exact. The hillside is uneven. The stones are irregular. It is better to keep room for adjustment. As she lifts them, the wall discloses something about how it fell. A few stones have simply rolled out. Others still hold crumbs of dry soil and small roots against their undersides, where the center loosened first. One long stone, almost hidden in bent grass, turns out to be heavier than it looks. She rocks it free, braces it against her thigh, and carries it a few feet uphill to where she can reach it later. Dust marks her fingers. A fine smell rises. Warm stone, crushed stems, a little exposed earth. At the baseline, where the old wall meets the collapse, she pulls away grass and loose thatch to find solid ground. The original foot is still there in places. Shallow set into the slope, not formal, just honest. The land gives what it gives. The wall answers it. She chooses the first footing stone because it is broad and stubborn and unromantic. Nothing in it is pretty. Its edges are blunted, its surface mottled with old weathering, but when she lowers it into place, it sits close to level. Not perfect, close. She presses down with both hands. It rocks once on a hidden lump of soil. She lifts it back out, scrapes the ground with the side of another stone, removes a root, settles it again. This time it holds. A second stone looks right from above and wrong as soon as it takes weight. It tips forward, then sideways. She turns it a quarter turn. Worse, she tries it on its long edge. No, the ground wants something else here. She sets that stone aside and reaches for a flatter one with a chipped corner. The chipped corner disappears into the turf. Suddenly the baseline makes sense. So it goes. Lift, carry, lower, test, lift again, turn, set, palm pressure, then a small shift of weight through the heel of her hand. When a stone wobbles, even a little, she knows it at once. The body notices before thought can arrange language around it. After the third or fourth footing stone, she stops framing the work as a problem to solve in advance. It is enough to find the next true seat. The breeze touches the back of her wrists. The grass brushes her knees through the cloth of her trousers. Somewhere below the rise at you calls once, not urgently, only to place herself in the field, and from higher up the slope comes the faint clink of a sheep moving its head. The sounds arrive spaced far apart, with room between them. When the footing line spans the gap, low and steady, she sits back on her heels and looks from one intact end to the other. The wall is already legible again at ground level. Not finished, not even near, but begun in the right place, below the place where the eye usually rests. Now the first face can rise. She picks from the flatter pile, looking less at outline than at bed. A face stone wants a settled top and bottom, something that will bear weight without twisting. She finds one with a broad gray face and a skin of pale lichen along one edge. When she places it on the outer side, the lichen ends up turned toward the light, and it pleases her, though that is not why it stays. It stays because it lies back into the wall and does not try to leave. The next stone is darker, finer grained, with one iris clean enough to make a neat line. She tries it and sees at once that its good edge is a distraction. The stone bridges a hollow, a tidy surface over air where there should be bearing. She removes it before the wish for neatness has time to argue. Another fits more honestly. A little irregular on the face, one end thicker than the other, but when she beds it against the first, it settles with a faint scrape and then a stillness. She leaves a narrow seam rather than force a poor junction. The wall can take small openings. It depends on them. Air will pass through, water will find its way out. Close to her hand, a spider has strung a short line from a grass stem to the standing wall. The thread brightens and disappears as it turns in the light. Farther along, in one of the old joints, a small black beetle vanishes between two weathered stones. She could wedge that crevice full with a chip. She does not. The gap is not part of the weakness. It belongs there. She builds the face gradually, checking the batter by eye, and then with her palm laid against the line of stone. The wall should lean in slightly as it rises. Not visibly, not dramatically, only enough that weight travels inward, gathering itself toward the center. She knows this from practice now, but also from looking at old walls for years and seeing which ones keep their shape and which ones spill themselves out into grass. As the first face reaches a modest height, the air changes beside it. Seed heads at its base stir less. A dry stem, broken and caught against a lower stone, no longer chatters in the same rhythm. On the far side of the gap, the hillside still takes the breeze fully, but here, in this short run she is rebuilding, a gentler pattern begins to form, not stillness, just interruption, deflection, a quieting. She goes to the opposite side and starts the second face. This side asks for different stones. The slope falls away a little more sharply, so the eye wants to correct for it, but the wall must answer itself, not the glance that crosses the field. She lays one stone, then another, looking often from end to end to keep the two faces roughly even in height. Between them is the empty center, waiting. When the faces are high enough to hold something, she reaches for the hearting stones. These are the pieces no one will admire later. The dry handfuls and palm-sized wedges, the angular fragments that disappear inside. She pours a small cascade of them into the middle and hears the sound they make, a neat pebbled settling, sharper than soil, softer than glass. Then she presses them down with her fingertips, feeling for voids. A face stone shifts under that pressure. Only a breath of movement, but there. She lifts it out, takes out two center pieces that had looked convenient, and replaces them with one larger shard and a wedge of thinner stone. The same face stone returns to its place and now sits down properly, bearing on the course below, braced by the fill within. Hidden work, necessary work. The rhythm grows plain enough to trust. Choose, lift, turn, set, check, fill, pause. Choose, lift, turn, set. The body learns the sequence and relaxes inside it. Her knees find comfortable patches in the grass. Her hands grow chalked with dust, and the smell of broken stems rises around her. Once she brushes against time creeping low in the turf, and the scent lifts suddenly, warm and sharp, then fades. She stands for a moment to ease her back and looks out across the hillside. Sheep are farther off now, small and cream-colored among the longer grass. Above them, swifts cut and loop in the upper air, fast enough to seem almost detached from the slow field below, but there are fewer than there were an hour ago. The light has changed without announcement. Shadows at the bases of stones are deeper. The bright surfaces are softer. What warmth the day laid into the rock is beginning to matter more than direct sun. She had not planned to stay this late, but does not regret it. When she kneels again, she works a little more slowly. The next course asks for judgment that sight alone does not give. Evening makes faces attractive. Edges glow. Thin lichen becomes more visible than bearing surfaces. She picks up a stone with a beautiful shape, narrow and tapering, and can imagine exactly how clean it would make the line. She turns it in her hands, weighs it, then puts it back, too eager to show itself. Too little bed. It would ask the wall to flatter it. The one she chooses instead is awkward, with a blunt nose, and one side thickened as if it once broke from a larger mass along an uncertain line. But it has weight where weight is useful. It leans into the course below. Its upper face gives the next stone somewhere trustworthy to sit. Once placed, it hardly draws attention. That is one way to know it is right. Near the base of the rebuilt section, under a slight lip between two older stones, the air is cool enough that a bead of damp has lasted longer there than in the open grass. Not moisture exactly, more the memory of it. Beside that cool pocket, another gap still holds a little stored warmth from the day. The wall is making both at once, shade and retention, narrow passages for wind, small chambers of calmer air, small weather, local and exact. She reaches for Harding again, and lets the pieces run from her hand into the center. Some are no bigger than walnuts. Some are flat and thin, more like shale chips than stones. They settle into hidden spaces where nothing larger can go. The wall needs these quiet corrections. Not much, but enough. By now she is no longer stepping outside the work to observe herself doing it. The earlier habit of standing a little apart, of converting each feature into data, has thinned, and something quieter has settled in its place. The field still offers information, but the stronger fact is weight in the hands, the angle of a stone as it comes down, the way one piece answers another with a precise refusal or a settled yes. She does not need to name what the wall is doing to know it. The breeze cools. Insects begin their thin evening sound, somewhere low in the grass. Not a chorus yet, just the first threads. A ewe calls again, farther away than before. The swifts remain overhead only in brief passes now, cutting the pale sky and then gone. The rebuilt section is almost ready for the stones that tie it together. She has set one longer piece aside for this. It is not grand, only longer than the rest, thick enough to reach inward and bind the wall across. She lifts it carefully, feeling the immediate demand it places on her shoulders and forearms, then brings it to the top course and lowers one end to test. Too high. She lifts it back. A small support beneath the near side is proud by half an inch. She removes that support, replaces it with a thinner flake, tests again. Still not right. The far face needs more under it. She adds a Harding piece, presses down, listens. The sound changes when a stone is nearly seated. At first there is scrape and small complaint. Then, if the bearings are honest, the weight moves through and the noise stops. This time the through-stone settles, not with drama, with a quiet acceptance of load. She leaves her hands on it for a moment, feeling the steadiness pass into both faces. The section answers as one piece now, not two skins with fill between. Above that, the top can close. She chooses coping stones from the remaining pile, looking for pieces broad enough to cap the wall and heavy enough to hold the courses below. One has a silver-gray top and a rough underside that still keeps the day's warmth in its deeper hollows. She turns it once in both hands before placing it. The warmth moves into her palms, then the evening air touches the skin where the stone has been. The first coping goes on well. The second rocks on a high point. She lifts it, studies the contact, and finds not a fault in the stone but a crumb of earth lodged where it should bear on stone. She brushes the crumb away with her thumb, shifts a small support piece beneath the far edge, and lowers the coping again. A slight scrape, then stillness. The final stones ask for the least forcing and receive it. By now the wall has taught the pace it wants. She aligns the top not into perfect evenness, but into continuity. Old wall to rebuilt section, intact run to repaired gap. Her hand moves along the upper line once, lightly, following the small rises and shallow dips. It is level enough, inward enough, sound. For a little while she remains kneeling beside it, not from fatigue exactly, but because the work has narrowed the world into a scale that feels complete. Stone, grass, air against the wrist. The insect sound becoming steadier, the smell of evening freshening the slope. Then she stands. Dry grass clings to her knees. Stone dust marks the heel of one hand and the side of her thumb. She brushes both away and takes a few steps back downhill to see the rebuilt stretch from a distance. The break is gone, not hidden, because the stones are newer turned and less weather-soft than their neighbors, but gone in the more important sense. The line holds. The wall reads as one thing again. A sheep moves along the path below without paying it any attention. The field does not pause for acknowledgement. It resumes. Grasses touch and release one another in the breeze. The insects keep their fine, even thread of sound. From somewhere beyond the rise comes one last quick pass of swifts, and then open sky. Already the air behaves differently at the repaired section. She can see it in the nearest seed heads, some standing almost still in the wall's lee, others moving beyond the reach of that shelter. There will be narrow, cool places between the lower stones before long, and small reservoirs of warmth held deeper in where the rock gives it back more slowly. Water, when it comes, will pass through instead of building pressure. Beetles will use the seams. Spiders will find corners. Grass at the base will lie in slightly altered directions by morning. She gathers the few remaining pieces and sets them neatly beside the wall where they will not roll. There is no need to tidy the hillside beyond that. No need to improve on what has already been done. The repaired length stands in the same quiet company as the older stone on either side, plain and useful, making its small climates, holding its boundary without hardness. The light lowers another degree. Gray begins to gather in the faces of the distant rocks. The wall keeps a faint residue of the day in its deeper parts. The grass cools first. The air above it follows. She rests one hand on the top stone before she leaves. Not as a claim, only in passing. Then she walks down through the field, and the dry stone wall remains where it should be on the hillside in the quiet evening, parting the wind here, slowing it there, letting it through in thin streams between the stones, already back at work in the small weather. Thank you for spending this time with the Night Sky Reader. May your night be peaceful. Until next time, rest well.